Welcome to Covenant Conversations. My name is Kyle Burkholder, and today we are doing something different on the podcast. My guest today is me. That's right, I'm the only one here. Today I'm doing a solo podcast, and the reason is I'm interviewing myself, essentially, about my time in South Africa and how it relates to fasting. So we're entering into this season where fasting is a thing. We're encouraging people in our local church to do it in groups and community, and there's all the information you need out there about why this is in the church, where it came from, how you do it, FAQs, what about this, what about that. Today I want to give you the heart of it, and as I was kind of praying about it and thinking about my time in South Africa as a missionary, it occurred to me that it really parallels so many of the benefits and the blessings that come from fasting. And so I'm just going to tell you a story, and we're going to work through it, and hopefully at the end of it, it's an encouragement to you to find God as your source, and that maybe fasting is one of the ways God wants to be a greater presence in your life. So without further ado, I would like to get back to me in today's Covenant Conversation. Well, welcome to Covenant Conversations. My name is Kyle Burkholder, and as you just heard in the preview, this is really could be called Covenant Soliloquies, because this is just me talking. I have no guests today. What I'm attempting to do is, as we move into the Lenten season, as we move into another season of embracing the spiritual discipline of fasting, I kind of want to tell you a story of a season of my life and see if I can make it make sense as it relates to fasting, because there's something about fasting in our world. It's become so intermingled with intermittent fasting and as a health kick, or I'm fasting from social media or whatever. And so I wanted to do something that's less on the how and more on the how does it feel and what does it do for us. And so what we're doing today is I'm just going to talk, and I'm going to tell you a story, and I think it does appeal to us as we enter into this season, and I hope, my goal is that it would draw you into the world of fasting, the discipline of fasting, and the desire to fast, as I think it'll reveal a bit about what it's for, what the absence of something is for. And so the story starts, 25 years ago, really. It's a long time ago. I moved to Africa as a missionary, and that whole process was wild. How I even came to think of Africa as a place I should be living was a pure God thing. I heard a sermon about Africa and went and talked to the pastor, and he said I didn't say a word about Africa, so I don't know what you heard. And that's one of those kind of spirit moments where you go, wait a minute, what? You definitely talked about it. Because I did not, but let's talk more about why you're supposed to be there. And through a series of connections, and I met a man who lived in inner city South Africa, and I was going to essentially work for him for free, and that's what a missionary does. And so I got a job at a call center. If you're old enough to know what that is, you'll know what that is. I was doing 411 operator call center for the larger Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area. What that means is I was spending most of my working hours telling people where the nearest drugstore was in suburban Reston, Virginia, or whatever. But this is what I did. I did it for about 6 months, saved up as much money as I could, about $6,000. I packed my whole life, all my possessions that I felt like I needed, into a military surplus duffel bag, and I moved. I got on a plane, and I moved to South Africa. San Antonio, Texas. I got on an airplane by myself at, I think it was maybe 23 years old. And that plane flew me to Atlanta. That plane then emptied out. I was in the Atlanta airport, and I got on a plane to St. Petersburg, Florida for some reason. That was the next stop on my ticket, and they got me out of the plane in St. Petersburg, Florida. I waited a couple hours, and they sent me to New York City. Had about 8 hours in New York City before they put me on a plane to London. In London, I had 13 hours. I sat in Heathrow for 13 hours until they finally put me on a plane to Johannesburg. So I landed in South Africa, and it was perfectly appropriate start to the story is no one was there to greet me at the airport. I had just left everything I knew. I'd left my family, my friends. I left everything, and no one was there. So I sat in the airport by myself for hours, figured out how to change money and make a phone call to a strange number that started with a 0 somehow. The church told me they'd be there eventually. Don't worry about it. So I didn't worry about it, and I sat, and after 5 hours, I was met by my hero, Pastor Willie, and his friend, and they came to pick me up. And what I realized even in that first day, 72 hours of travel followed by 5 more hours in a strange foreign airport by myself is my early fear and my early loneliness was being masked by adventure. And so that adventure carried me through a lot and kind of masked a lot and really propelled me through what was a pretty difficult thing. Actually, when I look back, I'm like, that was harder than I probably knew at the time. You have to remember this is a time when technology wasn't what it is now. Technology was email. That was like, whoa, you have an email address? That's cool. I think I had a cell phone at some point. I was in my 20s before I had a cell phone. But it wasn't a cell phone like today. It was the kind of thing that you put in the glove compartment of your car in case you broke down, and then you would turn it on and use it. But it wasn't something you kept on or used regularly. So I moved to Africa. I have no cell phone. That's not a thing. FaceTime is not a thing. Text messaging is not a thing. And I move in with this middle-aged South African woman they had set up for me. She had an empty bedroom, so I lived there. And I kept all of my money because I don't have a bank, and there's not an internet for me to get on and transfer money around, really. That's too early in that zone. So I had all my money that I'd saved up from the call center changed into South African money, and I kept it in a sock. Literally, I had a sock in my sock drawer. I had 4 drawers, and one of them had all of my money. So profoundly insecure, just to start with finances and where am I living and who is this person and that whole thing. So I did that for a couple months before moving into what we called the Mission House, which was this decrepit old colonial mansion. But when I say decrepit and old, it was old. I had a mattress on a floor, 40-year-old carpet, if even that young, a mattress on a floor and a window with a hole in it, and that was my room for the last 6-8 months of my time in South Africa. That first year I was there. So I had no friends. I'd left all my friends. I had no family and I had no familiarity. I lived in a strange foreign place, and it was an everyday struggle in some way. And yet that adventure propelled me through. I loved it. I loved the work. I loved the people. Like I said, my hero, this pastor who took me under his wing and showed me things, became my hero. I longed to just spend more time with him and learn more about what he was doing and how he loved people and feeding people and knowing people and marrying this couple and burying this old person. This is what every day was. So I was both feeling this profound loss of all the life that I'd known and this absence of all the things that I loved and I was comfortable, and sports were just gone. That wasn't a thing. You couldn't follow any of that. You couldn't watch anything. It was just all gone. And what happened is, as the adventure faded from those early days as a missionary and the months came, weeks became months, what happened is the loneliness started creeping in. And you realize after a while, and I realized on that mattress on the floor in the freezing cold room with the hole in the window, that when you remove every distraction from your life and every relational crutch was kind of kicked out from under me, I didn't have anyone to go to. I kind of realized in looking back that in hindsight, I was running. I was running from God in a lot of ways. I was running from relationships. I was running from pain. I was running from fear. I was running. And it's hard to run much further away than 10,000 miles away to South Africa. If you run much further, you're kind of running back home at that point. And I kind of, at the time, I had no clue. I just was compelled to do a thing. What I was coming out of, and this is maybe important context, is my younger sister had pretty profound health issues. When I was 19 years old, so a few years before I moved to Africa, I'd given my lung in a transplant in this life-saving kind of Hail Mary that my family pulled off. My dad gave a lung, I gave a lung, and we did it in order to hopefully save her. And it worked. It saved her. And yet she still had a ton of health problems and needed another lung transplant later and needed a kidney transplant later. And there was more to come. And so while it worked in the moment, it was both something that was pretty traumatic to go through, a voluntary surgery and multiple weeks in the hospital afterwards, and all with the fear that your sister may not make it and no one to tell you whether she was doing well or not. There's a lot of fear in that and a lot of confusion for a young person. I was 19. I didn't know much. I didn't have much wisdom, and I didn't have much in the way of Christian mentorship or biblical wisdom in my life. And so when I look back at that season of my life, it's really clear I had turned to what I would call dysfunctional soothing solutions. And that looks like all the things you think it looks like, whether it's relationships or alcohol or whatever. And when those sort of ran out, and none of those could make the pain go away, or none of those could make me feel better, or none of those satisfied me, and that's when I found myself running to South Africa. And I thought I was running. And to this day, I just told you, I think I was running. And what I thought was running was God reeling me in. And I couldn't have seen it at the time. And I thought, man, I'm doing a thing. And God's like, you're not doing anything. I'm doing a thing. I'm pulling you in. And so what God was doing in that season, he was separating me from all my dysfunction and all my dysfunctional behaviors and all my fears and all my confusion. He was separating me from all of that so that he could, in South Africa, reset my heart with these people, with this leader, this pastor. And he's also pulling out all of the safety nets from me. He's pulling out all of the things that I could turn to in the moment when I felt uncomfortable, when I felt ashamed, or when I felt confused, or when I felt fear. I didn't have friends to turn to. I didn't have family to turn to. I didn't have sports or television, or I didn't have hobbies I could turn to. All that was gone. I was living in South Africa. I was in this giant, old, broken down mansion with 13 African people, none of whom spoke my language first, shivering at night as the cold winds blew through the open hole in my window. This is where and it was this really deconstructed living. And then for the first time in my life, what happened, the reason I say God was reeling me in, is the first time in my life I had to learn to trust the Lord. Up until then, I could trust myself, I could trust family, friends, education, intelligence, and I had to begin to trust him, and I had to begin to believe that he provided. And it was a really big shift for me. Not only would he provide what I needed to have my wounds healed or have my fears comforted, but the work I was doing in dealing with AIDS patients or feeding hungry children or day-to-day work in a church, like I had to believe that he could provide for the starving kids that I couldn't feed. I tried, and I ran out of food. And the world never ran out of hungry people. I kept running out of food. So I had to begin to believe that he could provide. And so what God did is he used every single absence in my life, all of the things he'd removed, all these absences. He used the absence of all those comforts to bring me to himself. I had no other option. And it turns out he was so much better. So with a month left in that season, and this is, again, the really truncated version of the whole thing, I got about a month left in South Africa. I got a return ticket home. It's going to be just as goofball when it comes to how to get home as it was to how to get there. And I'm going to end up in Dallas. I have a friend getting married in Dallas, so I'd kind of organize my year to end with me returning to Dallas to see my friend get married, to be in the wedding. And they had fitted me for a tux before I left, so they were ready for it. They didn't know that I lost 30 pounds while I was in South Africa, and I didn't exactly have 30 to lose, but I came back a little skinny, so the suit didn't really fit, but they didn't need to know that. So with a month left before I head home, I head to this wedding, a situation comes up, and I'm confronted with this opportunity that there is someone in great need in front of me in South Africa. And remember, I started out with about $6,000 for more or less a year, and I was down to a month's worth or a little less with a month left to go. And this person needed it, and I knew I'd learned at this point to some degree, and part of it was, in hindsight, you go, were you just naive? Maybe. But I think I'd learned to trust. And so when this situation came up, I went and got my sock out of my sock drawer that had all the money in it, and I gave all of my money to this circumstance. I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't want this to be a big thing. And anyone on the outside would have said it's a wildly irrational decision. I had a whole month left that I needed to survive, and I just gave away the rest of my money. What I learned in that season was basically to trust that the Lord nudged me to give in that moment. And what I learned was, if God asks you to give, he's got a reason for it. And if God wants you to empty your pocket, he knows how to refill it. I learned that it was all his. And I'd been learning that through that year of kind of being broken down and had so much taken from me in a beautiful way. I don't say that in any sort of resentful way. It was beautiful the way that God stripped away all the junk in my life to show me himself. But I learned that everything was his anyway. And if it's his anyway, and he would nudge me to give it to a different person to hold, why wouldn't I do that? And so that's what I did. I gave all my money away. And that last month of my time in South Africa, I ate better than ever before. I had more delicious food. I was more full going to sleep at night. I lacked for nothing. And people I didn't know wanted to have me over for lunch had me. And people that had never invited me out to a meal invited me. And people who never had stuff to bring to me at the church brought it to me. And in every single way, everything I needed was covered. Every need I had for that entire month was met. More than that, what I experienced was this freedom. And I wouldn't have seen this coming. I mean, I can imagine where you go, I'm going to learn to trust God and give some money away and see if he takes care of me. What I felt was even bigger than that. I felt this freedom of not having to worry about the next meal. If you don't have it, if you can't get it, if there's no way for you to procure it, what happens is you stop worrying about it, you stop thinking about it. You go, well, I'll either eat or I won't, and God will either provide it or he won't. So I trusted, and he provided. And the freedom I felt in that was radical. Every single day, I woke up with freedom. God, what will you do today? And yes, there were days I ate less. I mean, I didn't eat much to begin with. I lost 30 pounds in less than a year. So I didn't eat a ton to begin with. So maybe I ate a little less here and there, but I also ate a lot more here and there. What it did is it shaped me in a profound way. It shaped my giving habits to this day. So when there's been a need throughout our lives, and this is not all the time, and I'm not perfect, and I'm not the most generous person on earth, but it shaped me to know that it's his, and if he asks us to give it or if he nudges us to do it, he's got it figured out. If there's something that seems like we can't afford it, whether it's for a child or for a neighbor or whatever, and it's like, I don't know if we can afford that this month, more times than not, when we've been faithful to give, he figures out the rest. And that started back then when I emptied that sock in the absence of any other safety net, any other backstop. It also convinced me, and it took me years to figure this out, but it convinced me that fasting has a place in our lives. That something as simple as being hungry, fasting, pulling away comfort even for a day, what that does for me now is it takes me back to those long nights shivering and hungry on the mattress on the floor in the room with the hole in the window. It takes me back there, and not in a nostalgic way where I go, oh, I remember how righteous I was. It's not that. Being hungry and having a little bit of that material comfort pulled away for one meal or one day or whatever that fasting window is, it reminds me that I'm his and that I didn't create all that I had, that I didn't create the food I'm eating. It wasn't my brilliance that filled up my bank account. It was his goodness and his grace and his favor and his mercy that he's in charge and he provides. So when I'm fasting today, to connect the two, when I'm fasting today, I feel that same freedom. The freedom of not having to worry about what's next and being more attentive to what he might be saying in the moment. That is kind of benefit one. If we were marking them, I don't have them listed or numbered, but if we wanted to start naming them, that's one. The other thing that happens is I turn when fasting, I turn to God with more passion, just like I did that year when I had nothing, when everything disappeared, when the absence was everywhere. I turn to God with more passion because I don't have my self-soothing mechanisms tamping that down and comforting me. I need him for comfort. So I turn to him with more passion. I pray with greater fervency. I long for his comforting presence in a way I wouldn't otherwise. So I suppose what I'm trying to say today is what I learned in Africa is that we surround ourselves with walls of comfort. These walls we put up keep out disappointment. They keep out discomfort. And what they really do is they keep reality out. They keep the ultimate eternal reality out. And what they do is they protect us, we think, but what they're really doing is isolating us from who we really are. They're isolating us from what is really true, from who is really true. And for me, Africa was the way that those walls came down. God said, watch me knock these walls down and watch me show you how much more rich your life actually is, minus all the things you think you need. Fasting on some small level is absolutely that same experience where God pulls away, knocks down the wall of caloric, delicious comfort and says, come see what true comfort looks like. Come beg for true hope, for true healing. Come look for true presence. And what you're being invited to when we as a church or whoever's listening to, wherever you are, when the Lord invites you to fast, to pray, He's not inviting you to take on some weird ascetic loss for the sake of growing. It's not a work to become more righteous. I do this thing that's hard for me, and that's good, and the hard stuff is good, and because I did a thing that's really bad for me and my health, it's good for me and my soul. They're not dissociated like that. God is inviting you to eliminate the things that distract you from His presence. He's inviting you to eliminate the temporary fullness you feel with food for a meal or a day. And then watch how true fullness shows up in Him. Maybe not at first, but over time you learn to look for something that will fill you. The same way that maybe not at first did I learn how to trust the Lord, but over months and months and ultimately years in Africa, I learned that the only thing I could trust was not another check, was not a sock full of money, was not even necessarily a relationship with somebody that was close to. What I could trust was that God is real and He loves me, and there is true hope to be found, and there is true healing to be found, and there is true peace for our souls, but it's only found in Him. My prayer for you, maybe if you got all the way through this, if you're still listening, send me an email and tell me that, because I'm shocked. But if you're still listening, that would be my prayer for you today, is that you would engage in fasting once a week, twice a week. We at Covenant suggest twice a week, 2 meals. So sun up to sundown. So you miss breakfast and lunch twice a week. We do it in groups. That matters, because that's who's going to hold you up. That's who's going to talk you through it. That's who's going to keep you accountable. That's who's going to remind you what it's all for. That's important. Growing in relationship with each other while we grow that relationship with God. But I would pray that you would engage in it. And as you do, ask the Lord, what walls is He trying to knock down that you've been putting up for protection, for comfort, for safety, for security, it's not real? What walls is He knocking down using fasting? And where in your life is He trying to be more present? Where in your life is He trying to be the presence and the hope and the comfort? So I hope that's helpful. I frankly don't know if this makes any sense. It's the first time we've tried it this way, doing a solo podcast, but hopefully it's helpful to you, and I pray it encourages you as we jump into fasting together, and may the Lord bless you as you find Him in the absence. Covenant Conversations is produced by Jake Trethaway and Robert McMahan. It's recorded at Covenant Church in the beautiful frozen swamp of Bowling Green, Ohio. For more information, visit bgcovenant.org.